The trophy husband I basically forced into submission got amnesia. His memory is stuck back when he was at his most defiant. Inside the hospital room, he was shouting. How could I ever be some woman's lapdog? I want a divorce. I happily agreed. But when it came time to go to the courthouse, he was a no-show. The divorce date got pushed back again and again. Finally, I'd had enough and stormed over to his place. I walked in just in time to see him crying his eyes out to one of his buddies. Can you go file the papers for me? I'm scared if I see her again, I'll just fall for her all over again. When I got the message, I rushed over to the hospital. Before I could even catch my breath, a pillow came flying out of the room. And of course, it hit me right in the face. Luke's suicidal ranting followed close behind. No way. There's no way I'd be some woman's lapdog. Even if she were a goddess, I'd never stoop that low. Even with amnesia, there's no way I'd forget my own wife. That just means you don't love her. I want a divorce. A vein throbbed in my forehead. Clenching my jaw, I pulled the pillow off my face and clicked my way inside on my high heels. The buddies gathered around Luke's bed all froze. One by one, they plastered sycophantic smiles on their faces. Hey, you're here. Luke's a dumbass, he's got amnesia. He's just talking crazy, don't take it to heart. I'll just hit him with my car again later. Maybe that'll knock his memory back into place. Luke, having just finished his tirade, was now pointedly staring out the window. His head was wrapped in bandages, and his hair was completely shaved. He looked like a hard-boiled egg with a face drawn on it. It was hilarious. The hard-boiled egg crossed his arms, his voice cold and dismissive. Stop acting, He turned his head as he spoke, but the words caught in his throat when he saw me. His eyes went wide. His pupils dilated. His ears turned visibly, rapidly red. Luke reached out a hand, his gaze darting away, not daring to meet mine. He stammered, hi. Do you have a boyfriend? I had to laugh. His buddies instantly shut their eyes. Pure despair. I pulled a chair over to Luke's bedside and sat down. I just stared at him for 2 solid seconds. My gaze made him flustered as Adam's apple bobbed nervously. He rubbed his smooth scalp, embarrassed. I probably don't look great right now, huh? Don't worry. I'm really handsome when I have hair. I smiled sweetly and asked, I heard them say you have a wife. The expression on Luke's face immediately soured into disgust. His brow furrowed in displeasure. Not for long. I'm divorcing her the second I get out of here. I raised an eyebrow. What if your wife doesn't agree? Then I'll take her to court. You can't force love. She's getting this divorce whether she likes it or not. Fine. I grabbed my bag and left. The hospital room was left with a beaming, confident Luke. And his buddies, who looked as numb as if they'd just died. I went home. I took some time to dig something up. It wasn't until nightfall that Luke, having finished all his checkups at the hospital, finally came back. He was still grumbling at the front door. So this is the house I share with that woman? Doesn't look like much. Hey, what does she even look like? Why didn't she come to the hospital to see me all day? I let out a cold snort. I couldn't wait to see his reaction when he opened the door. His buddies had long since given up on him. They grabbed his finger, pressed it onto the fingerprint scanner, and watched him open the door before quickly making their escape. They were terrified I'd fly into a rage and take it out on them. Luke's brow was furrowed in a deep frown. He walked in, his lip curled in a sneer. Then, he looked up. Our eyes met. Luke's jaw dropped open wide enough to fit an egg. He looked both shocked and delighted. What are you doing here? Did you come looking for me? The idiot really did scramble his brains. I narrowed my eyes and asked with a smirk, want to try that again? It finally dawned on him. Shock. You're my wife? Not really. Not for long. We're getting a divorce. I slapped a stack of papers down. Take a look. Luke's face paled. He shuffled over slowly. What is this? A tyrannical contract. One I'd forced him to sign back when I was in my forcefully loving him phase. I first saw Luke in a bar. He was in college back then, classes during the day, work at night. Later that night, someone wanted him to work a little overtime, make some quick cash. He wasn't interested. He smashed a bottle over the head of some greasy old guy who was trying to get handsy. The manager told him to apologize. He wasn't interested in that either. He just stood there, a pillar of righteous indignation. Basically, a stubborn mule. I watched the whole thing unfold, found him interesting, and stepped in to help. But then the kid turned around and started yelling at me, too. He said my money was dirty. You're all cut from the same cloth. I was so mad I had to laugh. Apparently, I was no different from the greasy old man who'd been harassing him. The only real differences were that I was rich, beautiful, and fundamentally a decent person, just with a terrible personality. I'd had my share of college guys like Luke, at least 3 or 4, and they were all calling me baby and honey from day one. I'd never encountered this defiant, virtuous type before. So I decided to have him, too. My methods weren't exactly clean. When Luke first moved in, he was a total drama queen, threatening to end it all every day. And he was hopelessly inexperienced in bed. Out of bed, he was even worse. I was convinced on multiple occasions that he was about to rip a bedsheet and hang himself. Thankfully, he didn't. It took a lot of work to train him into the man he became. And now he'd just forgotten it all. Well, this could be fun. Luke finally finished reading the tyrannical contract. His face shifted from green to red, then red to white, a painter's palette of emotions. Tears welled in his eyes, and his lips trembled. Were you really this awful? I nodded. Of course. Even an old-world slave driver would have to bow down to this agreement. Being on call 24/7 was just the baseline. My favorite clause was the one forbidding him from wearing underwear at home. If I caught him secretly wearing any, I'd dock his allowance. $10,000 a pop. His monthly allowance was $200,000. If he wanted to wear underwear all the time, he'd actually have to pay me. At the time, Luke's world had collapsed. The current Luke wasn't doing much better. His fingertips trembled, and his eyes, full of shattered hopes, met mine. How long did I live like this? I thought for a moment. 3 years. 3 years of him being defiant. I didn't need to mention the years after that when he was a perfectly willing lapdog. I stood up, walked over to him, and plucked the contract from his hands. Got all that? Luke shrank back, taking a sharp breath. I didn't care what he was thinking. I reached out and hooked my finger on the waistband of his pants. Luke's muscles tensed immediately. His 8-pack was practically visible through his shirt. I almost laughed. My nail deliberately traced the lines of his abs, slowly dragging down. I watched him shiver and flinch, the veins under his skin popping. A fine layer of goosebumps rose on his skin. Satisfied. I hooked the edge of his pants and pulled them away from his body. A cool draft rushed in. Luke swallowed hard. I let go. The elastic fabric snapped back against his skin. I said, "You have 1 minute. If you're still wearing underwear, you get fined." Luke's eyes went wide. "You." "Countdown starts now." He let out a yelp and bolted into his room. My fingertips tapped against the tabletop. I counted down the time, then knocked on his bedroom door. "Luke, come out." A friendly reminder, ignoring your sponsor also gets you fined. He yanked the door open, furious. His legs were twisted together unnaturally. His eyes were rimmed with red. A mix of shame and anger. He said, "You can't treat me like this." Right, right. That's what the defiant young man said back then, too. Interesting. I took a step forward, tilting my head up slightly to tease him. What's wrong? Weren't you just trying to pick me up this afternoon? Luke's face flushed an even deeper red. He scowled, his Adam's apple bobbing. I wanted to win you over fair and square, not. He paused. The rest of the words were practically squeezed from between his teeth. Not be your lapdog. I burst out laughing. I advanced on him, step by step, forcing him to back away. Until the back of his knees hit the edge of the bed and he sat down reflexively. I knelt on the bed beside him, looming over him. I patted his cheek lightly. But I don't need a boyfriend. I need a lapdog. Luke's breath hitched, and he whipped his head to the side. I grabbed his chin and turned his face back to me. Do you remember how to serve your sponsor? Luke tried one last desperate struggle. You can't touch me. You might want to check with your little friend downstairs before you say that. Luke glanced down abruptly, staring in shock at his own erection. His eyes were filled with the disbelief and fury of being betrayed by his own body. Oh, and a hidden flicker of anticipation. He opened his mouth, about to say something else. I shut him up. With my mouth. Luke froze on the spot. His heartbeat was so loud it was like an air raid siren. The next second, he frantically pushed me away, covering his mouth as he stumbled backward. He was beet red from head to toe. He looked like an innocent young bride who'd just been defiled. Why you can't just kiss people like that? Luke, did you get amnesia or did that fall just make you an idiot? I'm your sponsor. Disobey me and you get fined. I actually managed to pull him back and kiss him again. I wasn't so polite this time. I used my tongue. Luke's amnesia was so thorough he'd even forgotten how to breathe during a French kiss. I whispered a reminder, breathe, you idiot. He snapped out of his trance. But he still didn't know how to breathe. I'd heard that holding your breath for too long starves the brain of oxygen and makes you dumber. Reluctantly, I pulled away. I reached around and slipped my hand under his waistband to give his ass a squeeze. Nice. The underwear was gone. He was being obedient, at least. Luke yelped again, writhing on the bed like a worm in his embarrassment. I was feeling great. I walked out, humming a little tune. Luke was left behind, clothes in disarray, panting like a bull. He suddenly pulled the covers over his head, and a sound like a boiling kettle erupted from under the blankets. I heard the strange noise from outside the door. I turned back and pulled the door open. The whistling stopped. I closed it. The whistling continued. Thanks, I hate it. This time, I didn't leave when I closed the door. I leaned against it. I watched the giant lump on the bed tremble non-stop. I thought to myself, he's crying already? Seriously? He was a big boy. So I kissed him once. Plenty of people out there would kill for that. I licked my canine tooth, feeling a slight sting. Even better. This virtuous, innocent type was always the most fun to play with. He wanted a divorce, and I was happy to oblige. The divorce papers were sitting on the coffee table in the living room. Luke saw them, but he didn't sign them right away. Instead, after making absolutely sure I wasn't home, he pulled a small piece of fabric from his pocket. A pair of boxer briefs. He quickly put them on and let out a long sigh of relief. He patted his own butt, apparently feeling secure now. He left with the papers. I gestured to my driver. Follow him, I said calmly. Luke's destination was a quiet lounge, and his whole crew of degenerate friends was there with him. He sat down with a huff, his face tense. The papers landed lightly on the table. His friends saw them and exchanged glances, but no one said a word. The lounge was fairly crowded. I picked a spot that wasn't too close, but not too far either. No one noticed me for a while. They asked, Luke, what's up? You're not getting divorced? Luke held it in for a long time before finally speaking. He sounded a little shy, a little awkward. I was thinking maybe there was some kind of misunderstanding. I think she's actually pretty nice. A dead silence fell over the table. Everyone looked at him like he was an idiot. Including me. Someone finally broke, unable to hold it in. Nice how? Luke's eyes immediately lit up. She reminds me to breathe when we kiss. And I feel like, if she was really that bad, why would I have married her? I sighed heavily. I immediately got on my phone and had my assistant book an appointment for me at the best neurology clinic in the world. His buddies all gasped. They simultaneously made the gesture of lighting a cigarette. Honestly, to be a lapdog to this extent, that's a whole other level. Maybe you shouldn't get divorced. I'll just eat the papers later. If Julia asks, we'll say the dog ate them. I'm Julia. Luke was not pleased with their reaction. Hey. Am I supposed to be her lapdog forever? Didn't we have any tender moments? Does her not letting you wear underwear at home count? The guy who said this had a world-weary look on his face. Then he snapped back to reality. He scanned Luke's ass judgmentally. Did you wear any when you came out today? He looked like he was about to try and pull Luke's pants down. Luke almost jumped out of his skin. I did. Boxer briefs. Gray. He clutched his waistband, looking like he was about to have a breakdown. Can we stop talking about underwear? Isn't there anything else? The others. Of course there is. No underwear at home is one thing. But she doesn't even let you wear clothes when you do chores. Just an apron. Pouncing around the house naked. It's indecent. I took a slow sip of my fruit wine. Luke had a great body. So even though we had professional cleaners, I'd sometimes make Luke do it. And just as they said, anything that shouldn't be worn, wasn't. Remembering those fine views. It made me antsy. Meanwhile, Luke sat there. The tips of his ears were slowly turning red, but his expression was freezing over. But if I had to say, Luke didn't look angry at being humiliated right now. He looked more bashful and shy, like his secret had been discovered. His buddies were probably getting emotional, because they were getting more and more worked up. Being her lapdog is bad enough. Sometimes you're not even as good as a dog. You have to put 2 quarters in those kiddie rides outside the supermarket to get them to move. But you. Julia just says the word, and you're down on all fours giving her a ride. I spat out a mouthful of wine. I choked so hard I saw stars. They weren't wrong. But how did they know? Did Luke talk about this stuff outside the house? Because I sure as hell didn't. Luke was completely frozen, his pupils quaking. He was red from head to toe. If his head could produce steam, there'd probably be little white puffs rising from it right now. As a young man with a fairly high moral standard, his entire worldview had just been shattered. I was coughing so hard I thought my lungs would fly out. I didn't hear him whisper, almost inaudibly. How embarrassing. So we get up to some pretty kinky stuff in private. A sharp, good-looking waiter kept bringing me napkins and patting my back. I finally recovered. I suddenly realized it was way too quiet. I looked up. The booth next to me was giving me the side eye with various expressions. Some horrified, some despairing, some with their hands clasped in prayer. Luke's gaze was the hardest to ignore. His eyes lit up, then dimmed, then lit up, then dimmed again. I had no idea what he was thinking. He asked coldly, "What are you doing here?" I cleared my throat, feeling a strange twinge of guilt. I glanced at the waiter beside me. A wicked idea was born. I pulled him closer and said, word by word, "We're getting a divorce." So naturally, I'm out, looking for a replacement. Honestly. His friends were not very loyal. They had all vanished into thin air. Luke stood there, a look of anger and disbelief finally creeping onto his face. "You just kissed me yesterday. I propped my chin on my hand. So? Luke opened his mouth, then closed it again, his lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't cry when he heard about his lapdog antics. But now his eyes were red. He glared at the waiter still kneeling by my side. He said resentfully, "We're not divorced yet." This is. Luke was devastated. He shot me a mournful glance. It made my heart skip a beat. A strange, soft feeling started to well up inside me. Before it could fester, Luke charged over, yanked the waiter up, and tossed him aside. The movement was so fluid it was almost comical. That little bit of softness in my heart was immediately tossed aside. I laughed and asked him, "What's the big idea? Weren't you the one screaming for a divorce?" I put on a high-pitched, mocking voice, imitating him in the hospital. "I'll take her to court if I have to." "You can't force love." "Humph. Damn it." Just thinking about it made me angry. The color drained from Luke's face. He stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. I was done arguing with him. I got up, grabbed the papers from their table, and slapped them against his chest. "Get on with it. There's a 30-day waiting period after we file. I don't have time to go to court with you." Luke clutched the 2 pieces of paper. His body swayed as if all his strength had left him. The little prude, with his memory stuck years in the past, had a lot of pride. He cared about his image, and his mouth was harder than his dick. He couldn't say he loved me. And he couldn't say he was sorry. After a long moment, he asked in a hoarse voice, "Why did we get married in the first place?" He thought for a second, then his head shot up, his gaze intense. "That contract from yesterday didn't say anything about marriage. If it was just that kind of relationship." The little prude couldn't bring himself to say "I love you," but he was smart. He seemed to have found a loophole. He was desperately trying to dig up something called love. Too bad. Our marriage really didn't happen for that reason. I said flatly, "My family was pressuring me, and I couldn't find anyone suitable on short notice. You were just convenient." "Well." Luke wasn't smiling anymore. He gritted his teeth. "Fine, I'll sign." I gave the papers to my assistant to handle. The 30-day divorce waiting period was now in effect. Out of the goodness of my heart, I gave him a ride home. "You've been living here ever since you graduated college. I can give you some time. Before you find a new place." I was cut off by a strange rustling sound. I turned my head. Luke was taking off his underwear. He adapted pretty quickly. Maybe he suddenly realized what he was doing. Luke's face instantly turned beet red. His hands froze. His underwear was stuck around his knees, and he didn't know whether to pull them down or pull them back up. The air grew thick. The tense, combative atmosphere from the lounge was completely gone. Now there was only a modern-day prude in utter despair. And me, trying so hard not to laugh that my mouth was twitching. Perhaps sensing my gaze. Little Luke, right there in the open air, began to tremble and, very unhelpfully, stand at attention. I saw it and let out a teasing laugh. "Humph." Luke shuddered. A huge bead of sweat rolled down his temple. The veins on his arms bulged. He turned a whole new shade of red, practically glowing. I thought I could hear a primal scream from a distant age. Or maybe it was just Luke's internal monologue. His ears bright red, he stared intently at the floor, searching for something. Oh. A hole to crawl into. I was already dying of laughter on the inside. But my face remained impassive. "Move out once you find a place." And with that, I left. Leaving him with nothing but my cool, aloof back. A little while later, I peeked out of my room. Luke was still standing in the entryway. In the exact same position. Like a statue. The shock must have spurred him on, because Luke found a new place very quickly. He was moved out within 2 or 3 days. He even did it while I was at work, when I wasn't home. He made a big show of deleting his information from the fingerprint lock. I ignored him. Coincidentally, work was swamped these last few days. I was too busy to even go home. Today, the workload finally eased up. I rolled my stiff neck and buzzed my assistant on the intercom. Find me one of those things for physical relaxation. What was it called? The word was on the tip of my tongue, but I just couldn't remember. Luckily, my assistant was on the ball. Of course, I'll book you an online. I didn't have time for that. I frowned and cut her off. Book something in person. And have it sent to my house today. Assistant understood. It was rare for me not to work late. I drove home. When I saw the figure standing by my front door, a smile unconsciously tugged at my lips. Luke was leaning against the door, arms crossed, pouting. I had no idea how long he'd been waiting. When he saw my car pull in, his eyes lit up, and he instantly straightened up, only to quickly slump back against the door, feigning impatience. What took you so long? Me, can I help you? Luke cleared his throat, looking awkward. I left something here. I had no idea what he left. And I didn't dare ask. I sat on the sofa, propping my head on my hand, and watched Luke go in and out. He was holding 2 ratty old pajamas and made several trips. Every time he passed me, he'd shoot me a look, make a tisk sound, and then walk back. I, for one, was ignoring him. The doorbell rang suddenly. The massage chair I'd asked my assistant to order had arrived. I'd only just remembered the word for it on the drive home. My longtime assistant was very reliable. So I opened the door. And found myself face to face with a man in a pink maid outfit and cat ears. My pupils dilated in shock. What the hell? What kind of physical relaxation did you think I meant? Is this really the kind of total pervert my assistant thinks I am? Who is it? You've been standing at the door for ages. Luke peeked out from behind me, a mix of curiosity and suspicion on his face. Pupil dilation. He looked at me, then at the cat-eared man still half crouched on the ground. I instinctively wanted to explain. I had just opened my mouth. Luke gritted his teeth, his voice breaking into a sob. Julia, you're too much. You invited him over, so why did you make me come too? I had to laugh. Sometimes having a terrible personality really isn't a good thing. Seeing Luke with tears welling up in his eyes again. It just made me want to bully him more. I said with a wicked grin, what are you so worked up about? Nothing's even happened yet. What else are you planning to do? Whatever I can, I guess. Come to think of it. It had been a while since I'd had some fun. A certain virtuous young man shrieked if you touched him and could suffocate himself with a kiss. Let alone doing anything more. It was a shame. Luke was actually pretty big. My eyes drifted down to his crotch. I suddenly asked, are you wearing underwear today? When he realized what I meant, he completely lost it. Julia, what are you implying? Don't tell me you want a threesome. Let me tell you, I'm not that kind of man. I clicked my tongue. No, I was just asking. If you are, you owe me $10,000. The divorce papers were signed. But that tyrannical contract was still in effect. But Luke wasn't listening to a word I said. He blinked, and 2 streams of tears rolled down his cheeks. I froze. Come to think of it. This was the first time I'd ever actually seen Luke cry. He sniffled, his eyelashes wet with tears. Julia, how can you be such a horrible woman? Ouch. That was enough to make anyone's heart soften a little. Maybe I should comfort him. The thought had barely formed. Luke reacted even faster than I did. He let out a whimper and ran for it. He was so fast, you'd think he was afraid I'd chase him. The cat-eared man in front of me batted his eyelashes and jingled the bell around his neck. Mistress, shall we begin our physical relaxation? I let out a long sigh. I went to the storage shed and found a chainsaw for trimming the hedges. I handed it to him. Go mow the lawn in the backyard. The cat-eared man in the pink maid outfit? Confused, but he did as he was told. He was in the backyard, whimpering as he mowed the lawn. I pulled up a sun lounger and watched. It was actually pretty stress-relieving. Luke disappeared again. This time, he was gone for a long time, and completely. Not like last time. He said he'd moved out, but he'd still swing by my house every now and then to make his presence known. Counting the days, the 30-day divorce waiting period was almost over. I had my assistant remind him. The response I got was, he knows, he'll be there on time. Like hell I believed him. That little prude didn't have an honest bone in his body. He stood me up again. This was the third time. Did he think I was so bored I had nothing better to do than play house with him every day? I stood in front of the courthouse, fuming. My assistant chimed in at the perfect moment. The top neurosurgeon we booked an appointment with is coming to the city on business soon. Should I? I waved her off. No need. That idiot won't need it for the rest of his life. I knew where his new place was. His buddies had told me. I gave my assistant the day off. I drove over myself, ready for war. Luke! Get your ass out here. I heard noises from inside, but no one came to the door. I noticed his door had a keypad lock. On a whim, I typed in my own birthday. The door opened. Well, half of my anger did dissipate. When I walked in, the other half vanished too. Luke was collapsed on the living room floor, hugging his buddy and sobbing his heart out. Can you please go file the papers for me? I'm scared if I see her again, I'll just fall for her all over again. Julia is such a player, she doesn't like me at all, wah. His buddy had a completely numb expression on his face. I could only imagine how many times he'd heard this recently. I leaned against the doorframe and called out, Luke. Luke froze. Then he shifted positions and kept crying. I'm even hearing things now. There's no way Julia would come looking for me. She's probably busy playing with those hot cat boys right now, wah. So noisy. I strode forward and clamped my hand over his mouth. Shut up and look who it is. Julia. Luke instantly let go of his friend. His friend, looking half dead, crumpled to the floor with a thud. He cursed, damn it. Luke, are you even human? My legs are totally asleep from you crushing them. Luke didn't care. He pouted and shrank back. What are you doing here? To drag you to finalize the divorce, of course. Luke, I'd rather be hearing things. Still so noisy. I pinched the bridge of my nose. I was suddenly thinking that seeing a neurosurgeon might be a very good idea after all. Luke buried his head, avoiding reality. I stepped outside and called my assistant. I told her to go ahead and book that doctor. Assistant, perfect. His team actually requested a meeting with you. Well, no time to waste then. I didn't have time to deal with Luke. I drove straight off. When I saw the person in the office, I lit up. Leo. My older brother. I hadn't seen him in about 4 or 5 years. He'd been studying in Germany. The 3 years he was in Germany were the 8 years of my life I didn't see him. Leo pointed to the ID badge on his chest. He tilted his head up slightly. I let out a gasp of awe. Don't tell me you're that top-tier doctor. The standards must have really dropped. Leo flicked me hard on the forehead. I should have my mentor check your head first. I giggled. Hey, bro, can you get me an appointment with your mentor? Alright, spill it. What's up? I gave him the whole story. I especially emphasized the part about that idiot Luke falling and scrambling his brains. Leo looked disgusted. This is the guy you like? I looked away and pressed my lips together. I do like him a lot. What a coincidence. What terrible luck. Luke, who had chased me all the way from his place, heard only that last sentence. He had another breakdown. He started freaking out right outside my office door. Who's the new guy? Me, Leo, and Luke all went back to my place. This time, Luke managed to overcome his conditioned reflex and didn't take off his underwear. Leo, however, put on a pink apron I had previously bought for Luke and disappeared into the kitchen. The delicious smell of food wafted out. It made my stomach rumble. Luke was hiding by the kitchen doorway, muttering under his breath. Who wears a pink apron at his age? An old man trying to act young. At the dinner table, Leo sat next to me, constantly putting food on my plate. You like this too, eat up. A loud grinding sound suddenly filled the air. I looked up. Luke's eyes were bloodshot, and he was grinding his teeth so hard I thought they'd spark. I wanted to laugh so badly. Bite your tongue. Hold it in. Luke put down his chopsticks. Julia, who is he? Leo answered before I could. Who do you think, Mr. Ex-husband? Damn it. Seriously. Leo's image was completely different from all the pretty boys from before. Setting aside the fact that he was my brother. An elite doctor who'd studied abroad. He was enough to make Luke feel threatened. Remembering what Leo had said earlier, that he wanted to test this silly boy. I didn't deny it. I just sat back and enjoyed the show. Luke looked Leo up and down. He said slowly, and what's your last name, Mr. Replacement? Damn it. What a divine nickname. I pinched my thigh hard under the table, my brother's thigh. Bite your tongue, you have to hold it in. My brother sucked in a sharp breath of pain. Smith. Luke scoffed. Sounds like a name that's destined for bankruptcy. Dr. Smith, you studied abroad? You're not getting any younger. Can you still hold a scalpel steady? Getting held back from graduating was my brother's sore spot for life. Luke had just stomped all over it. He gritted his teeth. Don't you worry about me, Mr. X. A good ex-husband should be like he's dead. Don't just show up at your ex-wife's place whenever you feel like it. Damn it. I'm not divorced from Julia yet. You will be soon. Leo smiled, his eyes curving, and put another piece of food on my plate. I learned to make this while I was abroad. See if you like it. I wanted to eat it. Luke didn't give me the chance. He was so angry he nearly slammed his hand on the table. Dr. Smith, you work hard. At your age, you should take better care of yourself. Those crow's feet are getting hard to hide. Julia doesn't like old men. Leo shot him a cool glance. What's wrong with being a little older? Older men know how to take care of someone. Not like you, who doesn't know anything. Luke immediately retorted. What don't I know? What do you know? Do you know what Julia likes to eat and what she doesn't? Do you know her favorite color? Do you know the brand of women's cigarettes she keeps in her office? With every question Leo asked, Luke's face grew a shade paler. It wasn't that he didn't know. He'd been a very diligent kept man and husband for years. When it came to these things, he knew more than Leo, not less. But he had amnesia. Luke looked at me pleadingly, his eyes filled with obvious confusion and helplessness. He really had lost a very important part of his memory. I kept my eyes half closed, avoiding his gaze. After a moment, he murmured, I know her birthday. Leo laughed coldly. Julia's name is on the Forbes list. Her birth date is a quick search away on Wikipedia. It's public knowledge. Is your knowing really that valuable? Oh, right, I heard you have amnesia, didn't I? Then you should abdicate gracefully. All the color had drained from Luke's face. As if to psych himself up, he said, I just have amnesia, it's not like. I guessed he wanted to say, it's not like I don't love her anymore. But he didn't say it. I continued to play dumb. Besides, he was the one who had been screaming for a divorce in the hospital. And Leo wasn't about to let him off easy. Not like what? Forget it. Just have the decency to get lost. Luke's hands, hanging at his sides, clenched into fists. His voice was so hoarse it sounded like it had been scraped with sandpaper. I'll get better. Get better? When? Why should Julia waste her best years on you? Leo's gaze was like a knife. He was flaying Luke alive. As he spoke, he pulled a business card out of his pocket. This is my mentor, a renowned neurosurgeon. I wish you a speedy recovery, if you can even get an appointment. He stood up and playfully ruffled my hair. I'm heading out. At the door, he couldn't resist one last jab. Forgot to mention. Before I went abroad, Julia and I were childhood sweethearts. After hearing that, Luke slumped back into his chair, completely drained. His face was ashen. He really did look like he was dead. It seemed like he had no chance of winning. The dinner ended on a sour note. The living room was plunged into an endless silence that lasted until night fell. I didn't know if Luke had left or not. I was just coming out to see if the cleaning lady had come. But the moment I opened my door, I was pulled into a scorching hot embrace. A storm of kisses rained down on me. Small, rough, demanding kisses that left me breathless. I frowned and pushed against his chest, managing to get a gasp of air. Luke, MMPH. Luke was staging a rebellion. He pinned my wrists above my head and bit my lip. The taste of blood spread between our lips. Luke sucked on it, creating a suggestive silvery thread in the darkness. He kicked open my bedroom door and had me pressed against the bed in a few short steps. I grabbed a fistful of his hair. Moonlight streamed in through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. In that dim light, I could see Luke's bloodshot eyes. He'd been crying. I reached up and touched the corner of his eye. I sighed internally. Sure enough. I still had no resistance to this face. Luke took my hand and kissed it, pouting. He was completely heartbroken. The day of the car accident, I was on my way to buy you one of those limited edition cupcakes from the bakery. Playing the victim? No, just pathetic. I said the wrong things in the hospital. You can hit me, yell at me, not let me wear underwear, but how could you really get a D? He stopped himself. I teased him deliberately. A D what? Luke wouldn't let me say the next word. Even mouthing it earned me a kiss. After a long time, Luke suddenly bit me hard. Who was that guy tonight? Less talk, more underwear inspection. All this kissing and we still hadn't gotten to the main event. Come on. It had been over a month. Luke was more than happy to oblige. He grabbed my hand and pressed it against his body. Already took them off. I was afraid you'd find me, baby. It was a wild night. The next morning, Luke was whining for more. I refused. We'd played too rough last night, and the moment I opened my eyes, my back and legs were aching. But an appointment with a famous doctor was hard to get. I dragged myself out of bed and hauled Luke to the hospital. He frowned. I remember everything now. I don't need a checkup. We still needed to check. What if there were some lingering side effects? Luke couldn't win against me. When his number was called, the person who appeared before the famous doctor was the famous doctor's student, my brother, Leo. Luke immediately exploded. Damn it. What are you doing here? Leo rolled his eyes. I'm the one who pulled strings to get you this appointment. Where else would I be? Luke ignored him and started pulling me away. Let's go, let's go. This asshole looks like he'd saw my brain open with a chainsaw. You have a brain for him to saw? Sit back down. I forced him back into the waiting area. The doctor who examined him was the actual doctor. Leo didn't go in with him. He came out and stood next to me. He recovered? Looks like my unorthodox methods worked after all. But he still seems a little dumb. Is he really my brother-in-law? I lowered my eyes. A lot of memories flashed before me. I was just a sponsor who liked to cause trouble. But Luke was a very good partner. No matter how fierce or dramatic he was, his actions were always impeccable. Luke's test results came back. Everything is normal. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The second Luke walked out of the examination room, he grabbed my hand and started pulling me away. No more talking. What are you two even talking about for so long? What could you possibly have to talk about with him? Leo rolled his eyes again. You haven't told him? I blinked. Let's keep it a secret for now. Luke's reactions were just too much fun. I'd tell him when the time was right. As Luke was pulling me away, I suddenly turned back and gave my brother a nod. Answering his previous question. Luke, wait, what kind of secret code are you two using? You have to throw out that pink apron when we get home. And buy me a new one. Okay,